we'll be starting the next session. This will be a session, a conversation between Nasreen Munni Kabir and Elahe Hibtullah. And this is on a book on Javed Akhtar. This will be here in this venue in the next couple of minutes. The author as well as the Elahe as well as Nasreen both are here at Dr. Reddy's atrium. And this is a session, as I said, between Nasreen Munni Kabir, who has just come out with a book on Javed Akhtar's life. And in conversation with Nasreen is Elahe Hibtullah. I'm sure all of you who are from Hyderabad know Elahe. And for those of you who still need an introduction to Elahe, may I read out her very short profile. Elahe Hibtullah is a film producer. And of course, everybody knows that she's also the producer of all of Nagesh Kuknur's films. Her filmography includes films like Rockford, Teen Deviyan, Iqbal, Door, Dhanak, and the series City of Dreams and Modern Love, Hyderabad. She's also the co-founder of the cultural space La Makan in Hyderabad. So over to Elahe and Nasreen. Thank you so much.
Adab everyone. I'm so happy to be here and see so many familiar faces. There are some empty chairs, but that's okay. We'll fill them out sometime later. So thank you for coming out early morning at 11 o'clock. It was early morning for me. It's Hyderabad Munni. And I'm in conversation with the lovely, lovely Munni Kabir, Nasreen Munni Kabir, who should I call you Nasreen or Munni?
I think now I'm getting older, Nasreen is good.
No, yeah, Munni. It's okay. We are used to Munnis and Munnas in this city. So Nasreen has been has done a lot of work in, this is what, your 11th book?
21st.
I'm so sorry. I'm 11 books behind. But Munni has written a lot of books. But I want to tell you that this is when I was doing a little research on you, Munni, because I knew I was doing this panel, is when I first found out, and we've known each other, 25 odd years?
At least 25.
Yeah, so I think I first met Munni in London when they were trying to acquire the rights of Hyderabad Blues.
Yes, for Channel 4.
For Channel 4. And then, of course, our paths crossed in Bombay and many other cities and countries where film festivals and all were held. And I've known her for 25 odd years, and I've known her well, so well that I could call her Munni. But when I was doing research on her, I found out that she was born in Hyderabad.
Yes, that's
right. And
that
really, really shocked me, because I thought I knew every Hyderabadi and every Hyderabadi knew me. So how, Munni, please tell us, how did you grow up in Hyderabad? What were your Hyderabad years like? So welcome home firstly.
Thank you so much, Elahe. Lovely to be talking to you. And thank Vijay for inviting me and the whole of the festival team. Actually, I was born in Hyderabad, but my parents moved to England in the early 50s. So that means I had really no connection to Hyderabad. And it was only through some cousins who remained here, and of course you, and a few other friends. Otherwise, my connection was mainly Hyderabadi food. And also, there's a certain myth about Hyderabad. Wherever you are, when you say you were born in Hyderabad, everybody said, oh, really? So it's as if there was something really extra special about it. And when you come here and you meet the people, you realize there is something very special and very individual. Hyderabadis are unbelievably individuals. Everyone you meet has a certain personality.
That I absolutely agree. So you left literally as soon as you were born?
When I was 2 years old.
Okay. So then how come this love for Hindi cinema? Because it seemed like you moved to London and then you, in other parts of Europe, is what you told me. So how did, I know food connected you, but how, because most of your work is with Hindi cinema. So how did that come about?
Actually what it is when you meet any Indian families, Pakistani or Bangladeshi as well, who are living abroad, you will find their big and strong connection to Hindi films. They will watch them every day now on satellite or streaming on Amazon or Netflix. But in the old days, there used to be cinema halls in London where every Sunday you would show an Indian film. So that activity was very connected. And it was, I'll say again, the music. when you heard the film songs, you heard Lata ji and Rafi Saab, you took it home with you. So it became part of your home life. It became part of your everyday life. And it was Hindi cinema. Hindi film songs, I'm sure you will all agree, they kind of defined even what romance is. And so it was very much in your psyche. So Hindi films, not all of them are good, many of them are very bad, but it was a very important connection. And it's still a very important connection.
How lovely. But again, when I was again, hearing some of your interviews, your foray into the Hindi film world was through documentaries. Right, you worked on Guru Dutt, you worked on the Bachchan, Amitabh Bachchan, you worked on Shah Rukh Khan even. Then how come was this transition into the word? Because you've never been a journalist, you've always been a documentary filmmaker. So how did you move into the written word, Munni?
I see. The thing is that when I did all the documentaries, the form of the documentaries was very...
So one sec, Munni. Can you hear us clearly?
I started off curating Indian film festivals. So in London and in Paris at the Pompidou Center, we organized big festivals of Indian cinema. So first it started with study. And I wanted to do a thesis on Guru Dutt, Bimal Roy, Mehboob Khan and Raj Kapoor.
Wow.
That did not happen. But then the documentary started happening. And Channel 4 gave me a contract, which I'm still doing, to program Indian movies for Channel 4 television, which is the fourth main channel in England. Now it's one of 800, but in those days there were only 4. And so from that, the documentaries. Now when you do a documentary, you interview someone and they say wonderful things about their work and about the subject, but you will find no one will quote it and no one will remember it. There is nothing like a book for longevity. You may not make much money from a book. You'll make no money from a book. But what you do is you keep something forever. And the idea that documentary would be transient, would come and go depending on when it was on, while a book is there, a solid piece forever. And the idea that you leave something that has long impact really encouraged me.
Absolutely, I agree. And, I'll come to the other book that you wrote later, but all your books, so like I was saying, your documentaries were about Bimal Roy or Shah Rukh Khan or Amitabh Bachchan and the other people but your books, I have noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of them, barring maybe Waheeda Rehman, have had a strong connection to music, either lyrics or, the musician himself or, a music director. So why was that focus on music? Because there's Zakir Hussain, there's A.R. Rahman, there's Lata ji, there is Javed Akhtar. So why was the concentration on music and,
Because I think, and I'm sure many of you will agree, that what attaches us to Hindi film is the songs and the music. It is really the glue that keeps us connected. And this is of generations. When you see talent shows, you will find that the younger people are singing the old songs. So the old songs, especially because of their lyrics, are really imprinted on the mind. So when I knew, and like many people, that music was so important to Hindi film, in fact, it's the only original thing. So many of the stories are repeated and repeated and repeated. And reel 1, you can tell what will happen. Reel 3, reel 4, you can tell what will happen. Reel 18. And then you go home and go to sleep. So basically, what do you take away from it? And especially the older films, it's the songs. And so you have the songs, you can't just talk about music. Without the words, there is really no longevity. Nobody is going to hum the tune of Abhi Na Jao Chhodkar. If Sahir Saab did not write those words, the song would be forgotten. So it is a combination of the composer and the lyricist. And so Rahman is of today. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to work with or meet any of the older generation. But the connection between words and music is so important. And of course, Lata ji, who had an amazing understanding, not only of music, but of cinema, what it meant to... There was one lovely thing is that I asked her how much of her singing was actually going to help the actress. She said completely, because it is another performance. And then we found out that Meena Kumari and Madhubala ji, both of them said, if we work on this film and we sign this contract, we have to have Lata Mangeshkar sing for us. And Meena Kumari said, if Lata ji is singing, I don't need to act. So you can imagine what impact she brought into her songs. So basically music to me, especially the older songs, I'm not so sure about today, I must say, because today Hindi cinema does not know where to put the song. That time has passed. I don't think the songs are going to make any sense today.
You're absolutely right. I mean, earlier they used to say that songs in Indian cinema were like scene and verse, right? I mean, you could not have that scene and listen to the words of the song and know what the intent of the filmmaker was. But going back to your thing of the only thing that was original in Hindi music were the songs is also a little bit of a euphemism. Because just the other day, apparently in some Olympics, and this is a wrong country, but anyways, some Olympics was playing the national anthem of Israel, right? The Israeli national anthem came up. And one Indian said, "Arey, ye to Ajay Devgan ka gana hai." So they had copied the national anthem of Israel into an Ajay Devgan song, and that's how half the world knew it, not as the national anthem. So we've gone to such depths, also, or fallen to such depths.
I must check this out.
I will send you the. So that is it. But yes, Lata Mangeshkar, when you say talking of again enacting, that's beautiful that the actresses looked for the singer to perform. Another anecdote comes to mind was Shankar Mahadevan was saying that they actually had Sonu Nigam sing for Har Ghadi Badal Rahi Hai Roop Zindagi by Javed Akhtar for Kal Ho Na Ho. And Sonu Nigam came and he was overacting in the song. And Shankar is saying, "Pehle inhe overacting karenga, phir Shah Rukh Khan aayega." So he's saying, "Baap to ghar ja, kala, aur seedha gana ga. Don't put your overacting into the whole thing." Yes. So this, I completely understand what it means by singers had a big role to play in our movies as well. So who did you enjoy the most in all your conversations with, because they were all like literally, living room conversations. So who did you enjoy writing, which personality was the most enjoyable for you?
To be honest, it is very difficult to say. Many of these conversation books took 2 and 3 years. People think interview and it could be done in 1 month. It took 2 or 3 years. Wow. We would speak and stop and speak, and it was 10 times, 15 times, 20 times the same person. But I would say most definitely Lataji. And the reason why Lataji is that she had the biggest history. And another thing is that, okay, you talk about Javed Saab or you talk about Rahman, and each one has a specific relationship with the industry. They've worked on X number of films. Where you take someone like a singer, like Lataji, she worked with every composer, virtually everyone, virtually every lyricist, virtually every actress, virtually every composer. So her understanding of the film industry, nobody could beat it. Rafi Saab or her, she went to everyone and she knew them all. They all knew her. And whether they met her or didn't meet her, there was a connection to her work and her singing. So she had the richest history and she had the longest history. Because obviously she started when she was very young and she went through many phases and the production phases and differences in making of the films.
Wow.
In the way that the others have and have not. Javed Saab's work is really from the 70s. That's the big time. But she was from the 40s.
No, but then you've just proved your point that the book always stays more, because I've watched Lataji's interviews and they're not as interesting. So I don't think she's much of a speaker, or she can.
She was quite shy.
Yeah,
she was shy.
That's it. So I think I'm glad you did the book on. I just have to tell you that I thank you for all the work you've done. But one of the best work of Munni Kabir is this book, The Dialogues of Mughal-e-Azam, for me at least. Mughal-e-Azam had such an impact on me when I think I saw it when I was 8 or 9. And that's the only time I saw it, and I saw it again when it came out in color. And from that one watch, I had the entire movie by heart. I would start reciting anyway. मैं हिंदुस्तान हूँ, हिमालय मेरी सरहदों का निगहबान और गंगा मेरी पवित्रता की सौगंध. तारीख इस बात से नहीं, तारीख की इब्तिदा से मैं अंधेरे और उजालों का साथी हूँ और मेरी खाक में लिपटी हुई संगे मरमर की इमारत दुनिया से है कहती हैं कि जालिमों ने मुझे लूटा और मेहरबानों ने मुझे संवारा, नादानों ने मुझे जंजीरें पहनाई और मेरे चाहने वालों ने उसे काट फेंका, और मेरे उस चाहने वालों में से एक का नाम है मोहम्मद जलालुद्दीन अकबर. Thank you. This was a complete show-off moment for me, but it was Mughal-e-Azam. The language, now that we are being defiled by Akbar being the bad man and, the Mughals having ruled and killed us and, just taken all our country away. But Munni, I want to read one thing which I think was your favorite dialogue. And if the audience wants it to be translated in English, it can. But Urdu is just so fabulous that even if you don't get every word, just let it flow by your ears, and it's just absolutely stunning. This is a dialogue between Salim and Akbar. Akbar played by the thespian Prithviraj Kapoor, and Salim played by, of course, the inimitable Dilip Kumar. So they're just two dialogues, but it's a complete scene in itself. Akbar says, हम एक लाडले बेटे के शफीक बाप ज़रूर हैं, मगर हम शहंशाह के फ़र्ज़ को नज़रअंदाज नहीं कर सकते. हम अपने बेटे के धड़कते हुए दिल के लिए हिंदुस्तान की तकदीर नहीं बदल सकते. टू विच सलीम रिप्लाइज, तकदीरें बदल जाती है, ज़माना बदल जाता है, मुल्कों की तारीख़ बदल जाती है, शहंशाह बदल जाते हैं, मगर इस बदलती हुई दुनिया में मोहब्बत जिस इंसान का दामन थाम लेती है, वो इंसान नहीं बदलता. So I think Mughal-e-Azam was literally the definitive work that Munni, that you got it into a book, that we don't have to keep looking for our VHS tapes and our DVDs and different mediums that are still trying to get us connected to films. But this book will last forever. So Munni, thank you very much. Tehe dil se aapka shukriya ada hai कि you gave us this immortal work in a book form.
But I would like to just show you something about this book. The reason why it's good is that you have the English translation, you have the Roman, you have the Urdu, and you have the Devanagari, all in sync, so that any language you have or you don't have, you've got a choice.
A true Indian book. All Indian languages set in one book that you can understand and treasure.
Because, many people don't read Urdu. So they read Devanagari or they
Yes.
read the Roman. In
Yes.
Hindi cinema, majority of scripts are written in Roman. I don't know if you know that. Most of those actors are not reading Hindi or Urdu. They're written in Roman script. The action is written in English, and then you have the Roman dialogue.
So Munni, this is actually the first time I'm doing something like this, because normally I'm in your chair and then, people are asking me questions, but there are a couple of reasons I agreed to do this. First, because it was you, and it's always lovely to catch up with you, especially even if it's public, but I always like talking to you, so here we are. But the second reason is Javed Akhtar. I am such a huge fan of Javed Saab, and I know most of the people in the room will agree with me and say the same, but I think I should be counted as one of the most, I just love the man in all his various personalities. So another thank you to is not writing one, not two, but three books on him. Why? I do understand that, he has a lot to contribute, so was it just your fandom? Or was it the fact that, we needed to see every facet of Javed Akhtar to complete the man? And I think you should butt in, because I will keep gushing about Javed Akhtar, so please answer this before I carry on too much.
Well, the first book was actually my first book of conversation.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
My first book was about Guru Dutt, but then after that, a very dear friend of mine, Rukun Advani, who was working at OUP at the time, he said, look, your documentaries, you're talking to all these people, why don't you make a conversation book with one of them? Then, because I had interviewed for film Javed Saab, I thought he would be a great person to start with. And the first book was really concentrating on films and his idea of cinema and his dialogue writing and so on. Then, this is in 99. And then in 2002, it was going to be his 60th birthday, and we were all talking, and he said it would be lovely to have a book for his 60th birthday. By that time, he had written many songs, so we called it Talking Songs. And it was concentrating on the lyrics and different lyricists and what he felt about them. So it became another subject. Then the last one, which started before COVID, and then COVID stopped all the work, was about his life. So there were so many aspects to him that if we made it in one book, I should have thought about that in 99. I didn't. And as the time went by, very honestly, I could see there was so much more he could talk about. And I must tell you, there are very few people in Hindi cinema who analyze films and analyze cinema like Javed Saab. A lot of people give you a lot of information, but there's not enough analysis. And I didn't want to just write a book where he said he did this and he did this and he did this. So you have to analyze. You have to say, okay, I made this dialogue, why, how, when? And these are the questions that I'm interested in.
But that's wonderful, Muni, because you said you came to 3 books at 3 different points. Then it shows that the man didn't stop growing. You know, I mean, even the fact that his second book showed a growth of him, his growth as a lyricist and film songwriter. But in this book of yours, Javed Saab says that Mehboob Khan's aunt made a big impact on him. And he remembers it with, of course, Dilip Kumar and that swashbuckling song of Dil Mein Chupa Ke Pyar Ki Tufan Le Chale. And in one of your interviews, you said that Mehboob Khan's aunt made a big impact on you, and you chose a song which the woman sang, Nimmi sang, right? So was it that connect that that both of you thought the reason for you both to come in was Dilip Kumar, the fact that the same kind of movie made an impact on you, you both are such different personalities, but that, of course, was a big thing. But when you were interviewing Javed Saab, 2 questions, 2 parts to this question. One is that you literally, when you read any of Muni's books, you feel like you're a fly on the wall of that living room. But do you navigate the conversation, or is it just free flow?
It's very good if you feel you're in the room with him. It's very good, because I don't want to close the door on the subject and sit in the room with him. I want everybody to be in the room too. I also think it is a real privilege to get information and of the experience of working from the person who you are talking about. Now, for example, I never met Sahir Saab, but if I could have met Sahir Saab, I would prefer the interview format than me talking to him and putting whatever he says in my words, because the choice of words tells you a lot about somebody. So actually, with Javed Saab, not only was he evolving from 99, 2002 and now, I hope I was also learning. I hope I also understood better how to navigate a conversation. Now, a conversation is not an interview. It is really hopefully much wider, and you should be able not to talk about the here and now, but about why and when. And so that's why you learn as you go. And when I did this book, it was after 5 other conversation books. So I learned you do have to navigate. I mean, you can't just be flowing and without any structure. Without structure makes it extremely chaotic. And you can't, when you're talking about A, B, C, D, you can't go back to B. You have to keep going forward. So your narrative has to be structured, even if it's an interview.
Excellent, yeah, that makes sense. But now you just said that, in an interview, a lot of the personality comes out in the choice of words. So were you talking to Javed Saab in English? Or were you just happy to sit back and hear him speak in Urdu, of which he's a master of those words? So, were you translating a lot of Javed Saab's, so were you interviewing me in English or Urdu?
It was both. I would interview in English, And then he would answer sometimes in English, sometimes in Hindustani, Urdu, very good Urdu. My Urdu is not very good. My translation is not bad. I have to tell you an aside. I once interviewed Majru Sultanpuri. Everybody knows him here.
course.
Majru Saab, I said, Majru Saab, मुझे माफ़ कीजिए, मेरी उर्दू बहुत ही ख़राब है. मैं आपको सवाल अंग्रेज़ी में पूछूंगी. So he said, पूछिए पूछिए. Then he said to me, हमारे वालिद ने कहा कि ये अंग्रेज़ी जो है बदमाशों की ज़बान है, इसको मत सीखो. पर अभी आज तो बहुत बिग डिसएडवांटेज है. So that
That
was
is so lovely. Carrying on the aside, अगर अंग्रेजी बदमाशों की ज़बान है, तो हिंदी, उर्दू गद्दारों की ज़बान बन चुकी है. So हम क्या करें भाई? But it's like the only language is जिसको दाढ़ी टोपी बना के मुसलमान की ज़बान बना दिए. You know, the French speak in French, the Germans speak in German, but Urdu is spoken by Muslims, which is the most idiotic thing. But
Yes.
khair, anyways.
But obviously, Javed Saab's Urdu is so good, you can't compete. So you just manage.
Yeah. But so then he would speak a lot in Urdu, is it?
And then I would translate it. Lata ji was entirely in Hindustani. It is
Wow.
Hindustani.
Wow.
And while many of the conversations took place over the phone. And I must say one thing, when we had the book launch, there was somebody from the audience who said, how could you do this conversation mostly by telephone? And before I could answer, Lata ji took the microphone and said, मैं तो playback singer हूँ. You know,
That's
obviously she's never seen, but all the emotions come through the voice.
Fabulous. So then, okay. So, but you know, it is a known fact that Javed Saab did not speak or read or write English until much later in his life. But he seems to have read, as your book suggests, Gorky, and Victor Hugo was a big influence on him, and all the classics, and and not just classics of fiction, but even thinkers and their autobiographies and stuff. So how do you think he did that?
But you know, he explained to me that all these books were translated in Urdu. There was Gorky, there's Dostoevsky, there were many, many classic films. Even today, I went to an Urdu book fair in Bombay, and there was a new version of Crime and Punishment in Urdu. So actually, we forget that there are lots of translations in Urdu and Hindi. English has become so dominant that we think it's the center of the world, and it's not.
So, but if you hear Javed Saab speak in English, I'm sure all of you have, heard his interviews and stuff, and I've had some conversations with him. It doesn't seem like English was a language he came to much later in his life. He's extremely fluent. He's proficient. He's not as good as he is in Urdu because of the choice of words, but there is no stalling. There's no thinking of what to say next. So how do you think that came about?
I think he's got a very musical mind. He can write songs, so he understands the meter. When you have a musical ear, you understand phonetically how to pronounce words, how to speak. And he is a very intelligent man, and slowly he was reading and talking. You only learn a language if you talk a lot. You must speak in that language, and then you master it, and so he has mastered it. And the world, when you come and you see the TV channels, you see the newspapers, so much is in English. You can't escape it. In India, you can't escape English.
That's true. So, with Javed Saab, we've heard him at several conferences, we've heard him on television and stuff like that. He's an extremely fearless man, right? He knows what he's saying, he corrects you, he puts you in his place without demeaning you in a way. And he's, like I said, he's fearless and he speaks his mind. But having read the book, I felt that he was a little careful. He gave generic, sometimes esoteric answers, especially on his breakup with Salim Saab, which we have no idea about. Salim Saab doesn't speak, Javed Saab doesn't speak, and even when you asked him pointedly, saying what was the reason, the answer he went around the whole issue. Why would you think that is?
First of all, I think it's their sharafat. It is something that should be kept quiet. When you're good friends with people and you have a long relationship with them, should you be telling the world कि ये खाना बहुत खराब बनाता था और वो गाली बहुत देता था और वो whiskey बहुत पीता था? It's over. It's over. It's just like husbands and wives who divorce. Should they be talking badly about each other? They shouldn't. So, in fact, I appreciate that. I think it's a good thing.
But we want to know. Yeah, that's true. Actually, it is the sharafat. I agree on that. But he's very open about the fact that he had a drinking problem and he kind of, that the stopping to drink kind of changed his life. And, he literally single-handedly takes over the blame of his breakdown of his marriage with Honey, right? And there are pages devoted to that. But there are 2 paragraphs on Shabana. Is it? I mean, Munni.
But really, honestly, if you look at those 2 paragraphs, it's like Confucius. Confucius, you may know Confucius, this great Chinese philosopher. He said, the way out is through the door. Why is it that no one will use this method? So it's the same thing. How much do you say about someone you love and you live with? It's a bit embarrassing to overdo it. So he says, I could not live without her. And when she had an accident, he was completely destroyed. I had seen him at the hospital where she was. He was totally destroyed. I don't think you can say so much. You know how it is when you part with someone, God forbid, but someone dies, they become perfect. And they are talked about in a different way. But when you're living with someone, you don't talk about them like that.
I just want to know who's keeping a tab on the time because we are not. You are, okay. So another thing, Javed Saab talks about, if I have time, I'll read from the book, but if not, for him, rationalism is like the biggest thing on life, right? He says faith has no role to play if you look at life through the microscope of rationality and stuff. But even having said that, there are instances in your book when he draws coincidences which are so, it can only come to a dramatic mind. Is his training as a scriptwriter that draws the coincidences? Because he says that when Shabana Appa was in the stretch, in the ambulance with him after the accident, it was the same day that his mother had died that many years ago. So that kind of shook him. And then when he had his housewarming in Khandala, he bumped into Seskaria, who was the owner of Kamal Studios, on which he slept on the floor and on benches many nights. So how does a man that rational, succumb or draw these coincidences that come to his mind?
Actually, that's a very good question because we talked about that, and he said, this is the one advantage of being a celebrity. People know where you are and what you're doing. So if they met you when you were young, at 20 years old, and they had an encounter with you, they know 30 years later this man has become Javed Akhtar and he's going to be talking at such and such place, so they can come there and talk to him.
Like his French girlfriend.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes. So you have people who can find you if you're a celebrity. When Aam Janta like us, I don't think anyone will find us, but a few might.
Yeah, they'll run away. I've had encounters with people who are ignoring me these days.
But I'll tell you, this is a sign of Facebook. Why does Facebook exist? So people can find each other again.
That's true.
I must say that Javed Saab is very rational and very good, but he's extraordinary when he's talking with an audience. If he was here today, he would be extraordinary. I remember one little incident. We were talking and then somebody's phone rang. Obviously, the mobile should not ring, and it rang. And instead of doing anything, he just said, "Unko bhi mera salam dena."
Yeah, he's fabulous. His thinking on the feet, his wit, and it's nothing that will cut you to pieces, right? You're never embarrassed. You end up laughing at yourself with him than anything else. But, you were telling me about the fact that when he was at the Kala Ghoda Festival, the same book last week, the audience was filled with youth, young members. So he's still so relevant to the youth. How does it work? Does he want to stay relevant and therefore the youth finds him relevant? Or is it the other way around, that the youth find him relevant, so he is relevant over here? Does he try hard to stay relevant, was my question.
I think people who are writing songs even today are connecting with the youth because they're hearing the songs. They know that his children, Farhan and Zoya, are very well known to young people, and also they like what he has to say. He's very witty, he's very funny, he's very opinionated, and you may actually not like what he says, but you listen to him.
Yeah, he is very charming.
But
having said that about writing words, I'm sorry I picked up this song, and I think he messes with our minds also. This is a song of Om Shanti Om that was in 2007. I'm only reading it because I don't want to, miss out a word here or there. Of the main song, of the title track as they say, the words are Akhlo hosh namidanam, हम है दिल है और जानम, बस दीवानगी 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 है, अब कोई रहजन ना रहबर, फिर इल्जाम लगे किस पर, बस दीवानगी 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 है. Next line is, all hot girls put your hands up in the air and say Om Shanti Om. All cool boys, come on, make some noise and say Om Shanti Om. The same man who's using Rehzan and Rehbar and Aklo Hosh Namidanam is suddenly saying all hot boys and all cool girls and stuff like that. So, I mean, he knows what his market is, he knows how to deal with both, so he's never letting go of one, not even one, कि आप भी नहीं छूटना, आप भी नहीं छूटना. अगर आप over 60 हो तो आप मेरे fan रहना, आप below 25 हो, आप भी मेरे fan रहना. And he does it so beautifully.
But I have to say, many of the lyricists did it. Majroo Saab wrote in the 40s, Gham diye mushtaqil, and in the 90s he wrote, Papa kehte hain, bada naam karega.
Majroo Saab also wrote Disco 85. Disco 85, क्या था वो?
Yeah, and in Aati Kya Khandala was Majroo Saab.
Yeah. But not in the same song.
No,
आप समझ रहे? I mean,
right.
no one stopped humming this song. There were people dancing on the floor saying Akhlo hosh namidanam. You're like, what are you even saying? Not one person knew the word of Rehzan or Rehbar, but they were busy with all cool boys and all hot girls and doing this. So how much time do we have? Do we open it up for questions? Yeah. Yes, so we'll open the house up for questions. I think someone will have to take the mic around. Munni, the floor is completely yours.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask that in Indian cinema, you're filled with celebrities. How do you, or what attracts you to one subject probably? Because writing a book is very difficult and it takes a lot of time and effort. So what exactly attracts you to that personality that you think that, yes, this should be your legacy in a way?
I would say, first of all, I see the work of the person and I ask myself, can you show 5 films of this person and feel not embarrassed? And you can see Wahida ji, you show 5 films, you're not embarrassed. Rahman, you're not embarrassed. But you must like the work, not the person. Because what are you going there for? It's for their work. You're not going there because they give you good Nimbu Pani or something.
Yeah, I have referenced quite a few books in works of mine. So thank you for those books, including the one on Wahida Rahman. Before having the conversations, just wanted to ask you, how do you prepare? I mean, do you watch all their films? Do you listen to all their songs just to refresh your mind before you sit down and have the conversations?
Thank you. That's a good question. You have to prepare. What they do not like is if you are asking them basic research questions. I watch her films. I do a lot of subtitling. I'm not brilliant at Urdu or Hindi, but I know how to translate from the Hindi, and it's the target language. So when I've done a lot of subtitling of Wahida ji's films, and you see it shot by shot, so you can ask questions, I think you have to prepare very well. You must also surprise them. If you ask them questions that they know everybody is asked the same question, you get a very boring interview. You have to surprise people.
So with all the people you've interviewed and spoken to, do you find that many of them have a pattern to their creativity and the creative process, or are they creative about the creative process itself?
I think you're absolutely right. They are passionate about the process. The process, Wahida ji was very, very clear about the process and how she would deal with it. Rahman is very obsessive about how he deals with it. Javed Saab is very brilliant, so he can write a song in 10 minutes. But as far as the script is concerned, he understands the structure. He's really a brilliant dialogue writer. If you see all these dialogues of Diwar or Sholay, it is Javed Saab's writing. Salim Saab did the script and the screenplay. But the dialogue is Javed Saab. So you have to be passionate about the work, because it's working in film, Ilahi, is very hard work and it's tedious. It's very dull work. So if you don't have passion on your subject and what you're doing, I don't think you can last long. You'll give up.
You know, talking about being tedious in films or filmmaking is tedious, I have a lot of friends who says, "Yaar, my bucket list is come for a shoot," and I invite all of them. Not one friend has come twice. They have come once and they said, "Thank you very much. We'll see the movie on screen. This is boring as all hell." So yes, tedious is a part of our work, and you have to be passionate to do it.
Okay, so did you come across any of the nuances of Javed Sahab's personality during your interviews and also conversation, which the world did not know about it? Some of his contradictions, I mean internal contradictions sometimes. He's an atheist, but at the same time he has written one of the beautiful, narratives about love and, God and so on. So could you talk a little bit about that? Thank you.
When you're talking to Javed Saab, a lot of how he's thinking is very nuanced. But he is a professional script writer and a professional, he's also a professional songwriter. And once somebody asked him, Jabala says you are not romantic at all, but you write very romantic songs. How come? He said, look, if I'm working in a circus and I go home, I'm not going to hang from a trapeze. So basically, he believes that when you are a professional, you do your job. Now, when you invite a dentist for dinner, he's not checking everyone's teeth. He's a dentist. So these artists actually like not to talk about work, but however, their minds are able to empathize with that situation or that character so that the right emotion comes out. I asked Javed Saab in his film like Sholay, how do you manage to keep the vocabulary of each character very different? Now that is interesting to me. How is Gabbar talking like that from a very educated, sophisticated literary man who has 7 generations of poetry? How is he saying, kitne aadmi the? How is that happening? It's because he can put himself in the position of that bad Gabbar. And he can be the great line of Mr. Bachchan's famous line, Naam kya hai tera basanti? That is also Javed Saab. Now that is his humor. If somebody was to talk too much in front of him, that's exactly what he would say. So sometimes it is him, and sometimes it is understanding character, film character. I think there was one gentleman there.
Just to complete Naeem's question, Naeem, you should read the book. Your answer is all in the book. There are many facets of Javed Saab that you would not know that Munni's written about.
There are 3 people, one with his hands up.
So we have 10 minutes. So the person giving the mic just,
and
make
then this
make
gentleman
sure of
and
that.
then this lady.
Yeah, so I think the last 3 questions is what we'll take. Yep.
Hello, can you hear me? So a couple of questions. Apart from Javed Saab and Gulzar, very few writers have actually done songs also very well, right? Why is it so difficult to be a dialogue writer or a screenplay writer and do songs? I have a second question. How come there was no book on Dilip Kumar? How come there was no book on Dilip Kumar?
Saira Balu wrote a book on Dilip Kumar, which was signed Dilip Kumar. But I think I interviewed Yusuf Saab, Dilip Kumar, and I would have loved to do a documentary on him, but it didn't happen. Unfortunately, there should be a good book, but there are some people, it's very difficult. When you write, sometimes the experience of that person doesn't come across like music. It's very difficult to write about music because it's when you hear it, you know it. When you write about Dilip Kumar, I think I will feel there's no emotion in the writing because one felt so much for him. And his voice, his way of speaking, his quietness, his presence, I would say, how I would explain it, he was a bit like somebody, who had a butterfly personality. He was so from another world, really. But also, your first part of your question is, yes, you are right. There are very few lyricists and screenplay writers. There are some, but there are fewer. Now there is a young lady called Kausar Munir. She has been writing songs and she's also writing dialogue for web series, but it's rare. And Gulzar Saab also directed, so he's got even 3 things happening: lyrics, a screenplay, and direction. So some people they can multi-skill. Not everybody. I think, yeah, there are 2 books on Dilip Kumar.
Yeah,
I think what the gentleman was saying was, why didn't Munni write a book on Dilip Kumar, right? Not about what literature is there on Dilip Kumar, because,
Yeah.
but like Munni said, she feels so much about him that it would come out flat if it came out in the written word.
Yes, and I think I was in love with him when I was 12 years old. Oh, I have to tell you quickly one story. When I came to Hyderabad to see my family, I was 12 or 11 or 12, and there was a Ritz Hotel, I don't know if it exists, Ritz Hotel, and I was on the balcony, and Dilip Kumar arrived at the reception. I was looking down and I saw, my God is standing there. And he signed in, and then he looked up and he saw me and he said, I flew down those stairs and arrived in front of him. So he said, what's your name? And I said it. Where do you live? London. Oh, come and have tea with me. And we had tea. And of all the movie stars I have ever met, and I've met lots of movie stars, I will never forget those stairs and Yusuf Saab. Really, nothing matched that experience.
Yeah, very interesting conversations. Thank you. Very good insights. I would like to ask one question is, in your whole career, any one particular person you think like you should have done, your favorite? Only one. I'll give you only one.
Only one. I have 3. One. If there's only one, Sahir Ludhianvi.
So to end the most interesting conversations, you've had such in-depth time with both Gulzar Saab and Javed Saab. अपने तरफ से ये बताइए कि what did you find in common and what did you find different between the 2 of them?
I think Javed Saab has a very strong sense of humor. He makes you laugh a lot. Both are very serious. Gulzar Saab is very disciplined. He will work from 10:30 to 2 o'clock, lunch 2:30 to 5:30, 6 days a week. If he says to you 11 o'clock come, you come at 11. Gulzar Saab is also somebody who does not suffer fools. So if you say something that he doesn't like, he will inform you immediately. Javed Saab will be a little more humorous about it and make a joke of it. But they are both dedicated thinkers, and they are both approach singing, songwriting very differently. Gulzar Saab, you know, has a kind of a new imagery. The way he uses the word chand and pighalte ya bhige, it's a very different understanding of these words, while I would say the use of words is more classic in Javed Saab's work. I don't know if I've answered your question, but they are both good company. I would say Javed Saab is very funny, and he's now like a friend. Gulzar Saab is more professional relationship, but very, very nice.
Apparently, we can take more questions, so I think, please. She directly connected with me, so please.
So we have been your fans since Hyderabad Blues.
I knew she had to get the mic.
Yeah. So, and you still remain that bundle of energy. Good for you. Yeah. Ma'am, these days, music is overwhelming the lyric. I can only speak about South Indian songs. I see children being made to dance in community festivals and such for songs which have such adult content. Here again, I'm not debating the lyric, the content. I'm only saying people don't seem to be actually paying any attention to the lyric. There is this very popular Tum Tum song, it's called. It does have some real adult content. Every little kid is being made to dance to that ta-ta-tan-tan-ta-ta-tan-tan. Yeah? So, is there anything that eminent lyricists can and should be doing to bring about some sanity in the situation?
I'm afraid, I think it's also the market and the audience. I'm afraid the audience have to take some responsibility. They like all this, and I don't think many of them even are listening to the words. The music is so strong, it's so rhythmic, it's much more for dance than listening, but I think that they are pandering, it's vulgar, they're vulgar. And in every era there have been vulgar songs, you know, what to do? I mean, this is the way it's going. And the lyricists don't have much power. They can't say no because they need the job.
Also, I know this sounds silly, but maybe the parents can stop the children from dancing, no? Why go up to the lyricist to not write lyrics? I, as a mother, would tell my child, please don't dance to this vulgar song. Sing, you know, dance with this thing. Yeah. Then that's the parents' fault, not the lyricist's fault. Please. Sorry, I think someone else wants a question.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much for all the interesting tidbits that you gave out. I have 2 questions. As someone who's made documentary films earlier, how do you decide that this one is going to be a book and not a documentary? That's one. And second is, like, you would encounter some vulnerabilities and some things that you should not probably disclose to the public when you're interacting with these people. What is the metric that you use, and what is the standard you say, okay, this shall be omitted? So how do you go about working with those things?
The first question is, many of these books have come after the documentary. Like I've interviewed Javed Saab, then the books came. Same with Gulzar Saab, same with Shah Rukh. I had interviewed him and then the documentary came. To be honest, people, Lataji, I did a documentary on Guru Dutt. And I had never met Guru Dutt, but it was many people talking about Guru Dutt, Majru Saab, Kaifi Saab, Arbrar Alvi, Wahida Ji, Johnny Walker. Then after that, people liked that documentary and agreed to be interviewed in documentary. And then the books. So Guru Dutt was very important for me because they appreciated that work. And it would be lovely if you are like Guru Dutt, one day you can see that. Guru Dutt opened the doors. Afterwards, the documentary allowed me to get to know them, and then they need to trust you. You have to spend time with them. They have to think you're not going to make them feel defensive. If you attack them, they are going to do this. So you have to be very careful about why you are there. What are your intentions? Is it to badmouth them? Is it to get a scoop from them? Or is it to understand how they work? So once they know that you have honorable intentions, they are more trusting. To some extent, I wouldn't say censorship, because it's a kind of censorship, but some things I would not even ask. Like when people read my book on Wahida Ji, they will say, oh, but there's not saying that anything about Guru Dutt's relationship. So it will disappoint people that those are not the questions I will ask Wahida Ji. So in a way, I censor it according to my own sense of morality. So it happens here, it doesn't happen on paper.
So you'll run the time, right? You'll tell us when to stop. Okay.
Thank you very much giving me the opportunity. My question is that in 1970, late 70s and 80s, the movies were written by Javed Akhtar Saab and others, where the people from the downtrodden status were fight the established ideas, and they try to, the movies try to show raise the consciousness of the people for their rights. But you can see in these last 10-15 years, the supremacy of the certain class has been so much established that the movies are not made to raise the consciousness of the people so that they could talk about their freedom, rights and all this. Why this is happening? What do you think about? And the movies are not written.
I don't know why it's happening, but it is happening. And for example, Javed Saab himself says that in the 70s, in the 50s, the villain was the zamindar. In the 70s, he was the smuggler and the police officer and the politician. Today, the villain is the rich guy. There are virtually no villains. The only villains are the Pakistani villains. Otherwise, there are no villains. There are no Indian villains. They are mainly Muslims or Pakistanis. So that's it. So they are not interested in giving any good message. And it is the audience again. The audience, if you see a good serious film, did many of you see a film called 12 Fail? Now that's a very good film. But it's not going to get the success of Animal. Animal is the big hit. So it is the audience that determines these things.
But you know, having said that, I don't know whether this is a valid point to make right now, so I'll end with this. But Javed Akhtar gave us films like Diwar, and Javed Akhtar gave us films like even Shakti, you know, where the police was shown in a way. Javed Akhtar gave us films like Zanjeer. But his Javed Saab's son, Farhan, gave us a film called Dil Chahta Hai. Dil Chahta Hai was the first film where there was no angst with money. India was shown as a rich middle class, right? Earlier in Yash Chopra's films, when people were rich, they had liveried drivers who were uniform. They had chiffon curtains in their room. But here we had the youth driving their Mercedes and going off to Goa. There was no rich guy, poor girl, or poor rich man, you know, rich girl, poor man. There was no angst with economics. And that, I think, was in its way a path-breaking film. But it's funny that the father-son duo made such different kinds of Indian films, right? Their sense of India was so different from each other, where the father was a socialist India, but the son literally was a capitalist India. So I think, you know, I think people move on with times, and I think that's what filmmakers do. They are a reflection of society at the end of it. But I think we're running out of time, and our next speaker's here, so we should relinquish the stage to them. And thank you all so much for coming. I hope it was as much fun for you as it was for me. Thank you.